I know there were some other questions there, so yeah, please.
I realize we could spend another hour talking about what I'm about to ask, so say as little as you want to, but I'm curious for your take on the situation in Washington and the inability, it seems, for the two sides to work together. I just would love your take on what maybe is sort of causing that, or how they could make their negotiations better. And I actually, in light of your book, I wondered if maybe the Republican Party now feels a little bit better with themselves, now having majorities in both houses, and maybe that helps the negotiation process. I don't know.
Sure. There's been this stalemate in Washington. I mean, it seems like both parties have been busy getting to no rather than getting to yes for the last 6 years, and certainly it's challenging even for the next 2 years. But to me, it's a classic example of the logic of each side trying to win. And the end is there's stalemate. Both sides end up losing. And actually, in these situations, it's lose, 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 because the American people, our country, loses our ability to work together to build, a country with good infrastructure, with decent pay for people, with opportunity for everyone. That's suffered a lot in this process, as well as our ability to work together to solve global problems, be it climate change or anything. And so we've paid a huge cost for it. Essentially, they've been playing a game of an eye for an eye, and we all go blind. And so, how do you change that? It's partly process, like things we're talking about. It's also partly systemic. I had the opportunity a number of years ago to be a facilitator at what was billed as a bipartisan congressional retreat. It was held in Hershey, Pennsylvania. There were about 200 members of Congress, about 100 Republicans, 100 Democrats with their spouses, and so on. And it was interesting to me that when you actually got people together, first of all, we asked them, questions. We broke into small groups. Let's say we had maybe 4, each group for conversation. We had 4 congressmen from each side, about 8. But ask them, what's this like? Why'd you go into politics in the first place? And what's the toll of this kind of conflict? And it was interesting, particularly hearing from them and their spouses, of just how unpleasant and how contrary to whatever they'd hoped to do, because you spend a lot of time trying to get into Congress and then you can do nothing, basically. It's frustrating. And it was interesting, a lot of them said to me that they had spent more time visiting with people across the aisle on the train ride from D.C., because we were all in one train that got hired, up to Hershey, Pennsylvania, than they had in the previous 4 years. So to me, it's partly about breaking down those walls. But once they got talking with each other, I could really see there was real potential. One of the problems is that in the old days, or what seems like the old days, when there was more kind of collaboration, cooperation, it was partly because there were a lot of informal relationships that existed. Partly because people used to live more in Washington. Now they live more in their own districts, and they fly back every Friday night. And when they used to live in Washington, they used to be, their kids went to the same schools, the Little League or whatever it was. They got together, and so that one thing I've found is that informal time, where you can have cross-cutting relationships that aren't just that you're a Democrat and that you're a Republican, can kind of humanize the situation, because right now it's descended into a lot of blaming, a lot of finger pointing, and this is where it goes back to getting the yes with yourself, which is more about taking responsibility for yourself and for your I'd love to see people say like 2 spouses, you can blame each other, or you can say, look, I'm responsible. I'm 100% responsible for our relationship. And the other person is 100% responsible for the relationship. So the Democrats are 100% responsible for instead of just saying, oh, it's all the Republicans' fault. Or the Republicans are 100% responsible for what's going on, and just a different modality. And it may seem hard, but I've seen many examples of bipartisan cooperation, starting with Ted Kennedy here. I mean, for example, he was a classic, liberal battler, but he also knew how to build bridges. He always worked with Republicans. It's been done before. It can be done again. And I'm hoping, back to your question, that now, because of what you said, the Republicans, now that they control both houses of Congress, they're under a little pressure to deliver. Because they got to deliver. They're not just the minority party anymore. So they've got to deliver. And they want to deliver. And President Obama also, he wants to deliver too. He's got 2 years left to, accomplish his legacy. And so I'd say there's an incentive now, if they can learn to, these methods of getting to yes, which is instead of attacking each other, attack the problem together. Sit down, try and figure out what the incentives are. That little exercise we just did about perceived injustice, there's a lot of that going on. When I talk to Democrats and Republicans, they think, oh, they stung us there, we're going to sting them back. That kind of gotcha game. Everyone's got their black books. We got to learn to get beyond that.